it's an HPC application. I don't know how much more we can talk about that. Now, the challenges, I think, they're interesting because we are going to, and maybe Kathy's point a little bit, we're going to have more of a discussion around the data, right? So things like underrepresented communities, underrepresented, for weather, right? Weather sensors, are they not in the areas that they need to be? But you have to start, before you can have a conversation with the data, you have to have a conversation about your data, and that conversation has to be, there has to be policies and processes that we'll have to set up to do this. We have to understand our biases. Can we work with them? Can we, how do we fill the gaps? How do we understand the answers that we're getting from this thing that we've implemented? And that's going to be, I think, a challenge because, coming from a deterministic science, right? I put numbers in, I get numbers out, I understand the answer, and if I don't, I go looking for, I think that's going to change, right? In the world of AI, especially in generative AI, you're putting new data into a model every day. The answer is going to change. You may not understand that, so how do you build that understanding? How do you bring people together to have that discussion? We tend to focus a lot about infrastructure, and I think that's important. And you have to really think about infrastructure before you start going out and hiring people to do this. But how you implement things like where are your ethics? And is there an order for that, right? What does trustworthy mean to this organization? What's our vision? What are our, I don't want to use the word morals, but what are our values around this thing? That has to come first. Then you start working down the technical, so that you can start building down the chain about your data, about how we handle our data, who owns our data, right? Who can we impact? Who can we impact negatively? All of these things have to kind of come into that discussion, and it's a discussion, right? It's not it'd be nice if this was a technical problem, but I don't think this is a technical problem, right? We understand the technical parts. We understand the computational parts. We can understand the model at a computational level, but it's going to be a discussion about that data and how we bring it together around the applications that we're all supporting.
Thank you, Frank. And so I'm going to turn it over also to Anna.
I was chuckling as you were speaking, Frank, because you were so thoughtful. And what made me laugh is we're talking about the need to have conversations around data that we haven't had conversations about, period. Right? So we actually haven't had the kind of conversations around the questions, if you think about hiring as an application, right? And the challenges and concerns that have been raised around the way that AI has been used to kind of filter applications and resumes. There are things that have been taken for granted in the process of selecting applicants, or have been taken for granted in the process of mortgage application selections and screening and the like, that when we automate it, then we're like, oh wait, we should think about why we did that. We should think about who that impacts. We should think about the negative implications in ways that we hadn't fully processed, considered, and it's asking us to articulate what we've taken for granted and the biases that are built into our data. Like, data didn't just kind of fall from the sky without kind of pre-existing background. All that's built in. And so we can't ask the process to fix the problem that the process didn't create. And so there's a conversation then to be had about that and kind of safeguards and discussions and the issue of just trust in broader communities that really don't understand like the makings of like, well, how did we get there? And so the point of, well, we might not be able to explain it, that makes a whole different set of people deeply uncomfortable about trusting the outcomes of a process that we can't explain that might have deeply negative implications. Right? And so the future of generative predictive AI and the possibility that it holds for all of us is on one side kind of the new frontier, and for others the kind of deep-seated angst around the moments in other areas where we've had new frontiers, who's been negatively impacted, and at what cost. And are we building in those kinds of questions as we're thinking it through? Because if we take it as a technical problem, right, and we solve it, right, of kind of how quick, how fast can we advance it, not asking the questions around, should we, right, who is impacted by, and what are the costs?
Okay, thank you. So a lot around the data, and like you said, who's impacted, where's the data coming from, the ethics, and things of that nature. I want to turn it over to Kathy too, because this also, we talk about the computational methods, because, for example, when we look at large language models, they're taking months of time to train such models. So that's on exascale type systems. So there's advances that are needed too, as well on the computational aspect. But I do want to turn it over to Kathy.
To pick up on the data and the ethics, I think, it's a completely different world that computer scientists are coming into, graduating into than I certainly had at the time, where I think the ethical questions were much simpler, right? I mean, they were fairly concrete. I said this morning, but it was about don't write buggy software, or if you think software doesn't work, you need to tell somebody about it. Those were the kinds of ethical challenges that people face, which are not nearly the same breadth and scope and importance even, although there were some of those that were very important, but that what we have today, where it is affecting our legal system, our medical system, we're putting people in jail using AI, we are deciding who gets treatments from hospitals based on AI, and some of this is happening kind of under the covers, right? It's not all so explicit. And I think for this community, which has had a long history of working across disciplines, and I think we're very comfortable with that, right? We've had talks for years on cosmology and biology and climate change and things, but this is a different community now. These are sociologists, right? And they're artists, and they're journalists, and they're people that are influencing the way we think about the world and maybe the way we think about ourselves. And so those things are really quite different ethical problems than I think we're used to facing as computer scientists.
Thank you. And Mateo?
Yeah, coming back, we all know that in 47, the transistor was invented. And it was quickly to change the way we build computer, okay? But we should know that in 53, it was presented the structure of the DNA, and you were talking about the work you are doing and many other people. It's incredible. They don't have technology until a few years just to sequence the genome, okay? So they were delayed because the technology didn't help them, okay? But we should remind that in 56, the concept of the AI appeared, and they were very good talented people providing ideas, but they were unable also to demonstrate that these ideas are very good. So we know that because the data, because our architecture, we help them to do things that are incredible. For me, if I need to select one of the main contributions of the AI to the society, I would say the protein folding, which is incredible. This is a Nobel Prize, the Nobel Prize idea, and I don't have any doubt that probably in a few years, the Nobel Prize in medicine will be given to computer scientists, okay, because this is relevant. So, I mean, this is good. They are helping us. They are changing the way we do HPC, as you say. But I think that the AI can do more than just at the software level. They can do many good things at the hardware level. So if you look to the past, as far as I know, the first paper where we apply techniques coming from the AI to the design of some parts of the architecture was in 01 with the branch predictor from Daniel Jimenez, who used the perceptron to improve the branch predictor. Okay? After that, there are many works dealing with how you do prefetching, or how you do NOC, neuronal chip, how you optimize the runtime. Okay, so this is true. But can we use the current techniques coming from the AI to do more in computer architecture? So we are in Barcelona very interested in what we call the configurable vector architecture and how the AI can help to the design of this architecture. The current architectures are very rigid. So can we train network in order to give us information with many data, input the data, to give us information about how would be the basic architecture for vector architecture, I love vector architecture, and then can something else at the hardware level, a small network doing the later match of any program to optimize, to make this architecture adaptable dynamically to the workload. That would be great, okay? I will also ask, probably this idea comes from my friend Steve Wallach, would the AI build a digital twin as the genius, the person who we love, Seymour Cray? Because if they can produce people that have these brilliant ideas, without any doubt, they can help to the design of the future computer architecture. So I would say that the AI computer architecture, HPC, we need to be connected at any level. We need to do co-design with the LLM languages you are developing, how we get information from the AI to build better and better, and how we use additional information to optimize the use of runtime, economizing, energy, whatever, using it. So I am very excited. I would like to be younger to continue in this.
So using the AI in terms of the architectures that are used in HPC systems and driving it, but we also heard about the ethics and also the data, but also looking at the local and the community impact as well. So that leads me to one question that I want to get in before we open it up for questions. So this is my last question that we'll have a discussion and then we'll open up. So that's a preview of questions to come. So I want to spend some time talking about workforce, because we talked about people as a major aspect. And that this is important for the future of HPC, and that is important for the health of the community, that we continue to engage bright minds in HPC, which means diverse professionals and students who bring that diversity of perspective to result in robust and exceptional solutions. So I welcome your insights about effective strategies for increasing the workforce in HPC with attention to diverse professionals and students along many dimensions. So to start us off in that conversation, I'm going to start off with Anna.
Sure. You know, I think one of the things that holds lots of potential, and I'll pose the challenge first and I'll turn to the opportunity, is that at most institutions, thinking about four-year traditional colleges and universities, computer science departments don't have the capacity to meet the demand. And so the ways that we are making choices about who we admit on the front end is an early constraint to who's available at the back end. And so the question of how do we make selections? Because if we make selections in those early years in ways that pre-select for exposure, then on the back end, we won't have the opportunity for the diverse insights and perspectives that we want in the field. And so that's one side. The opportunity is for us to move beyond a computer science degree as the only path in. And so the question is, how do we do that? How do we accommodate the kinds of field preparation? The community is already interdisciplinary. How do we allow for an interdisciplinary preparation? Because so much, if I use medicine as the example, one of the things that medical schools start to do is say, you don't have to be a biology or chemistry major, but here's a suite of courses that you have to take. And if you've completed those, then you can actually get into medical school anyway, right? What would it look like for us to offer those kinds of clear alternative paths in? And it's hard given the breadth of coursework that we require, but that's a question for us to ask. What would it look like for us to offer those kinds of pathways in, so that if you didn't pass that first class and you are on an off-ramp early for a host of reasons that the literature tells us a lot about, that there are ways for people to say, I can still do and see myself in this, and there's room in the field for me. Because I think when folks who are not in this space, who weren't exposed early, they don't understand the breadth of possibility that computer science as a whole offers, right? And the interdisciplinary realms that this conference offers. They have that narrow window of that first intro to computer science class. It's 400 people deep. And that's it, right? And then they're like, no, that's not for me, without knowing what this is. And so I would go back to that for those of you that are in colleges and universities, and for those of you that are in national labs, and think about who are you screening for your internships? What are you looking for? Are we asking the right questions? Are we looking at the right criteria? Because the goal, I think, for all of us is, how do we create the spark? How do we create that possibility, that imagination that allows someone to say, oh, that could be me. I want to do this. And leave people with a broader image of what the this is. Because as we're talking about it, the this is changing in real time, right? And so we want to give students, professionals who are thinking about shifts in their own professional paths, the most robust and imaginative version of this possible.
And before we move on, I just want to pull on that just a bit too. And you mentioned about higher ed. And my question has to do too with, should we also look, let's say in the K through 12,
Absolutely.
prior to higher ed, and and I guess your thoughts about the excitement of HPC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I was talking to someone the other day with younger children, and we said, the most damaging question that we ask kids is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because you're not going to beat a 7-year-old unless their parents were computer science who says, I want to be an HPC. It's just not happening, right? That's not the language. They don't understand, right, the kind of field realms that are out there. So I think the ways that we start to offer people possibilities of what they can be matter. And the earlier we do that, matters, right? Because in a lot of institutions, if you don't come in on a computer science track, going back to higher ed, it's hard to get on one, right, later. Well, you won't come in on that track if you didn't know that was the path. So the earlier that we start to expose, but kind of going back to my earlier comments, it's exposing to the full breadth, right? That's not just saying, oh, just hold this program. It's both that we want you to understand conceptually what the work involves and the range of what you can do with it, right? I think that has to start much earlier.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Kat.